They always laughed louder when I wasn't in the room. At first, I told myself it was in my head. A weird echo. A pause I walked into too late. But one evening, the silence afterward was louder than the laughter. The kind of silence that waits for a door to shut before it breathes again. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon tea. 3 mugs steamed on the table, hers, mine, his. Lined up like a memory. Like a habit no one questioned. But I did. That night, I questioned everything. She stirred hers without looking. Absent-minded, slow. Not really stirring, just turning something in her mind. He was talking one of his long stories, the kind I used to help finish when we were teenagers. Back when we were all equal in our laughter. Back when her laugh belonged to me too. She laughed before the punchline. Not at the story. At him. Like they'd already shared it somewhere else. My eyes moved to her hand. It hovered near his elbow on the table. Close. Not touching. Not inappropriate, technically. But close enough that my chest tightened. Not with jealousy, not exactly. It was colder than that. Like I'd been shifted out of the frame. Like I was watching a play I used to star in and someone else had taken my lines. I didn't say anything. I didn't even blink. Just picked up my mug, warm but untouched, and pretended to sip. Mine was full. Theirs were half empty. Like they'd had time. Like the world had gone on without me. Later that night, I brought the mugs to the sink. One had a faint lipstick stain, hers. One had the sharp scent of whiskey, his. Mine smelled like nothing. The silence had returned by then. She'd gone upstairs. He'd said something about getting an Uber but lingered a little too long in the hallway. They didn't hug goodbye. But their eyes said more than they should have. I stood at the sink with my hands under the water, not washing anything. Just letting the heat burn a little. I used to love how the kitchen smelled at night, tea, cinnamon, her perfume faint on the air. Now it smelled like something else. Like a memory about to turn sour. 3 mugs. That's all it took. She left her phone in the living room. That never happened. Not even by accident. It was her second skin, always face down, always silenced. But tonight, it blinked alone on the armrest like a forgotten thought. I walked past it. Then it lit up. His name. Just 4 letters. Innocuous. Could have been anyone. But it wasn't. I knew. My blood knew before my mind did. The message was short. I miss you. At first, I stood still. Not because of what it said, but because it didn't surprise me. I had known. Not the details. Not the name. But the shape of it. The soft edits to her smile. The pauses between her words. The way she never played music around me anymore. This was the shape I'd been tracing in my head for weeks. Now it had a voice. A second message came. The phone buzzed once. Quiet. Like it knew it was trespassing. When can we talk? And below that, a heart. Red. Bright. Clean. Just one. Not a flood. Just enough. I didn't touch the screen. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. Not by the words, but by how carefully they were sent. Small enough to hide. Big enough to mean something. She was in the shower. Steam drifted through the hallway like a veil. I could hear her humming faintly. A tune I didn't recognize. A voice that felt miles away. I sat on the edge of the couch and stared at her phone like it might breathe. I wanted it to explain. I wanted it to lie to me in some believable way. I would have welcomed it. Instead, it just sat there. Still. Blinking once more as if to say, you saw this. You can't unsee it? I put it down gently. Like a glass I didn't want to break. But my hands were shaking. I tried to tell myself not to open it. That maybe I'd misread the name. Maybe I'd imagine the emoji. But deep down, I already knew. Once you see the crack, you start looking for more. And when you do, you realize the wall was never solid. It just hadn't fallen yet. He always stayed late. We'd play until midnight. Laugh like we used to. Talk about nothing and everything between button mashes and long silences. But not that night. At 10:07, he stood up mid-match. Said something about needing to be up early. Didn't stretch. Didn't finish the round. Just stood. It's good to see you, man, he said. Same words. Same voice. But not the same. He didn't meet my eyes. She walked him to the door. In her pajamas. No makeup. Hair twisted up like she was winding it out of the way for something. A look I'd seen 100 times, relaxed, casual, tired. But that night, it felt prepared. She didn't say much. Just stood near him, hands tucked into her sleeves like she was keeping something warm. He gave her a quick smile. Then he was gone. I heard the lock turn. Heard her bare feet retreat down the hallway. She said she was tired. Kissed me on the top of my head as she passed, the way you might kiss a brother or a pet. I nodded, eyes still on the paused game screen. But I didn't unpause it. I sat there, controller in hand. feeling like I was inside a house after the furniture's been moved. The shape was still there, but it wasn't mine anymore. 10:29, her phone lit up. It was plugged in, screen tilted just enough. Wish I could stay longer. You looked beautiful tonight. The message hung there, soft and glowing, like a whisper in a dark room. My breath caught, not out of shock, but recognition. This was it. The next thread. The one you tug on when the sweater's already fraying. I opened the chat. I don't know why I did it gently, like it could hurt me more if I wasn't careful. But it still did. Each message, a quiet undoing. The language between them wasn't dirty. It wasn't even obvious. But it was worse. It was familiar, tender, ongoing. They spoke like people who knew how to speak without getting caught, who understood the luxury of timing, who didn't need to say everything to mean everything. And there it was, my marriage unspooling one message at a time, not in anger, not in confession, but in routine. I sat there while the screen dimmed, then went dark, and I didn't turn it back on. I stopped joining them in the kitchen. I said I was tired, or busy, or not feeling social. She didn't press. He didn't notice. Or maybe they both knew. Maybe that's why they stayed so long. From the hallway, their voices blended together. Soft, muffled, ordinary. The hum of comfort, the ease of something well practiced. But her laugh was different now. Not forced, not polite. It had weight again. That warm, breathless flutter she used to have when we first met. I hadn't heard it in months. Maybe more. He said something, a joke probably. I couldn't make out the words. Just the rhythm. The way her voice danced around his. She teased him. I could hear the shape of it. Light, playful, familiar. His reply came fast. Then she squealed. Not dramatic. Not for show. Just delighted. And then silence. Not an uncomfortable one. A silence that holds you like a blanket. I pressed my palm against the wall. Cold drywall. Dry paint. Felt like nothing. But on the other side, something lived. Something warm. Something I didn't belong to anymore. I stood there too long, listening to a world that used to be mine. The next day, I moved the furniture. Rearranged the living room. Pushed the couch against a different wall. Cleared out the shelves. Bagged up old game cases and cables. Untangled years of dust and memory. She watched for a while. Then said, "It looks cleaner." I nodded. But I wasn't cleaning. I was clearing space. Not for them. For the truth. The truth that had been knocking for weeks. The truth I had tried to keep in a box with old controllers and dinner routines. But it didn't fit there anymore. It fit better in the empty spaces. In the rearranged room. In the silence I'd stopped trying to fill. Sometimes starting over doesn't look like a breakdown. Sometimes it looks like moving a couch. It wasn't in her messages. Not even on the surface of her phone. It was buried, deep in the files section where no one scrolls. Tucked between old audio notes and ambient sound recordings. Probably accidental. Probably not. A file named only with numbers. I tapped it, and heard her say his name. Soft. Almost reverent. Then laughter. Then words that didn't sound like her. Or maybe they did, and I just hadn't heard them in a long time. He thinks we're still just friends. Click. That was it. 12 seconds. Maybe less. But every syllable felt like a thread pulled from the center of me. Not yanked, just unwound. Patient. Deliberate. I sat in the dark and played it again. And again. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I needed to memorize it. The tone she saved for him. The one I'd forgotten. Or maybe never knew. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. The pause after his name. The way her breath caught before the laugh. The intimacy wasn't in the words. It was in the rhythm between them. That night I asked how her day was. She smiled. Kissed my cheek. Said, "You're quiet lately. Everything okay?" I nodded. Because that's what you do when the lie is gentler than the truth. But in that moment, I understood something terrifying. She could lie, and still sound like love. I didn't mean to scroll that far. I just wanted to know when it began. Not the obvious part, the messages with hearts, the "I miss you" texts, the plans. I wanted the origin, the first fracture. So I kept swiping up, past the jokes, past the inside references, past the photos that felt too warm, too familiar. It didn't start last week, or last month. It started the week I told him I was afraid. I remember that night. The living room was dim. A storm was rolling in. I said something like, "I feel like I'm watching her from the outside." I told him I wasn't sleeping, that I couldn't shake the feeling something was slipping. He put a hand on my shoulder, said I was overthinking it. "She adores you, man." But here it was, a message from that same night. From him, not to me, to her. "He's scared. Should we slow down?" Her reply came quickly. "He trusts you more than himself. We'll be careful." Not sorry, not conflicted, just tactical. Like I was a variable, a risk to manage. I stared at that sentence until the words stopped making sense. Until the screen blurred and my eyes stung from holding them open too long. We'll be careful. They hadn't been careful. Not really. Or maybe they had, and I just finally caught up. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I just kept scrolling. Each message another brick falling from a house I didn't know was already half demolished. Each good night that wasn't meant for me. Each "I wish I could touch you" typed while I was in the next room. I didn't know what I was looking for anymore. Maybe a version of them that felt guilty. Or a version of me that hadn't seen this yet. But neither existed. There was only the scroll. And the silence between messages. They didn't just betray me. They curated it. I found the folder by accident. Her cloud account still linked to the old tablet. Buried under trip receipts and archived documents. A folder labeled "Us." I opened it. Photos. Just a few. Not explicit. Not even romantic. But somehow worse. Her in the old flannel I gave her. The one she used to call her comfort shirt. Them at my favorite cafe. The corner booth. 2 mugs, 1 cinnamon roll split in half. She used to save the edge for me. Said it had the most frosting. A short video clip. Him filming her from behind as she walked ahead. Wind in her hair. She turned and laughed. I'd seen that look before. But it had been years. And never directed at me like that anymore. Then there was the image that stopped me cold. A barbecue. One I hosted. The 3 of us had posed, beers in hand, smoke curling from the grill behind us. I remember thinking it was a good day. But in this version I wasn't in it. Cropped. Cleanly. As if I'd never been there. Not blurry. Not accidental. Just erased. I sat for a long time with that photo open. Watching a version of my life where I didn't exist. Not even as a footnote. That night I printed it. 2 versions. One as I remembered it. The full photo. My arm around her, his grin tight beside mine. And one as she'd kept it. I taped them side by side on the fridge. No words. No note. Just truth pinned under a magnet shaped like a lemon. The next morning, she walked into the kitchen half awake. She saw them. Stopped. Her eyes scanned both images. Slowly. Like she wanted to unsee them. Like if she blinked enough, they'd disappear. She didn't speak. Just stared. And in that stillness, something shifted. For the first time, she looked small in front of me. Not because I raised my voice. Not because I asked a single question. But because I didn't have to. She knew I knew. And no lie could shrink that truth. I didn't ask if it was true. I asked her when she stopped being mine. We were at the kitchen table. The same one where we used to drink Sunday coffee and make grocery lists we never stuck to. Now 2 mugs sat cooling between us. No third. She reached for my hand. I moved it. Was it real? I asked. Any of it? She looked down. Then away. Her mouth opened like she might lie. But there was no room left for that. It just happened, she whispered. No, things don't just happen. You don't fall into someone else's arms like a tripwire. You walk there, one small step at a time, one ignored truth after another. People choose, I said. My voice didn't rise. My hands didn't shake. The damage was already done. No volume could deepen it. She cried. Not for me. For herself. The tears weren't loud. Just soft sounds like something coming apart beneath the surface. Not guilt, not remorse, just the weight of something no longer hidden. It was over, not because I ended it, but because the lie had finally worn out. I didn't yell. I didn't ask her why. I didn't beg for the version of her that used to be mine. I just nodded and stood up. She stayed seated, small, still, staring at her mug like it could change the temperature in the room. But nothing could. Sometimes, dignity is quieter than heartbreak, and heavier than goodbye. He came to the door. I didn't answer, just watched from the upstairs window. His hands were in his pockets, head slightly down, like he'd rehearsed the moment, but didn't like the way it felt. His face wasn't guilty. It was worse. It was pity. He stood there for a while, maybe hoping I'd come down, maybe knowing I wouldn't. Then he left. She moved out a week later, said she needed clarity. I didn't argue. I let her pack in silence. The house echoed more with every item she took. Drawer by drawer, room by room. Her absence filled the space louder than her presence ever had. I donated the third mug, took down the photos, deleted numbers, unfollowed both of them. Not in anger, not in pettiness. In release. I kept the couch, the one where we used to sit, talk, pretend. Not as a shrine, not as a wound, as proof I could still sit there, alone, and not feel less whole for it. At first, I thought it would destroy me. The loneliness, the empty bed, the ghosts in the hallway. But something strange happened. The silence stopped feeling empty. It became honest. No pretending. No sideways glances. No hidden chats echoing in another room. Just stillness. Mine. And in that stillness, something settled. Not peace exactly, but the beginning of it. I found her journal. Blank. The one she used to keep by the bed. Said she'd write in it someday. Said she wanted to remember the little things. The way mornings smelled. The way we used to be. She never did. Not a single page. Just potential left untouched. That morning I sat at the kitchen table. Same spot as always. Same morning light curling through the blinds. I opened the journal. Took a pen. And wrote one line. They didn't end me. They revealed me. Then I closed it. Left it on the counter. I made tea. One mug. No cinnamon. The silence still lingers. Some nights are longer than others. Some memories still pull too sharply, too suddenly. But they don't shape me anymore. Not the way they used to. I'm not who I was when this started. Not the version of me they betrayed. Not the man who waited for apologies that would never come. And maybe that's the gift beneath the wound. Being erased forced me to write myself back in. On my own terms. With my own pen. No edits. No shared lines. Just truth. One page at a time.